Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Scat, scat.
Soul brother Nelson Beauieu is on the mic.
What's up, buddy?
And his best bud, Jason McCoy. And guess what, folks? We're back with a new season of Put 'em on the Couch. We are about 3 days away, Nelson, from our third year on the air.
Absolutely. Man, that's crazy.
Something like May 19th. Actually, might be 4 or 5 days away.
That's crazy. It's the 14th.
14th, so we're 5 days away. Nelson, it's been a while. We're a little rusty.
Yeah, well, we were rusty last time, but we got a couple in the can.
Yeah, we took a couple of weeks off, actually about 5 or 6, ladies and gentlemen. And admittedly, I just kind of grew tired. I'm sure you guys probably grew tired of hearing us every single week. So we decided to take a little hiatus. Sorry we didn't come on the air and tell you we were taking this hiatus. Honestly, it was just kind of an amalgam of different things that caused us to go off the air for a couple of weeks. We had the end of our semester coming up. A couple of us were sick in the family. You know how things go.
Yeah, it was a long couple of weeks. End of the semester's killer.
But, you know, it wasn't without some level of preparation. We did record a few shows. I've got one on a special type of grief called ambiguous grief. We're going to look at how people reacted when they learned the news, Nelson, that President Trump had won a second term. I think I've given you guys a sneak peek of this other one that I've put in the can and almost finished editing now. Or actually, I think I am finished editing it. About a young lady who was kidnapped as a child. Her parents paid someone to come in and take her from her own house when she was about 17 years old.
I think I saw that story on like
Netflix or Dateline.
More of it. Or, yeah,
this is what we call the troubled teen industry, Nelson. And what do you do with kids who parents say they're out of control? There's nothing that they can do to stop them from hurting themselves or making bad decisions. And at what age should we allow kids to make these mistakes? Certainly we can't let them make these terrible mistakes with their life at age 11, but is 17 too close to adulthood
I know,
to
it's
be
weird.
Kidnapping your kids?
Yeah. Was she 17?
Yeah.
So we got
we
that
also
one.
did a little episode on the conclave and the
Pope.
Pope. Unfortunately, we did this before our new Pope was selected, or
Yes,
fortunately.
we did. Yes,
so
we
you
did.
get kind of a look at what the conclave is all about and a little bit of the history about selecting popes. We got some interesting little tidbits, little anecdotes.
I never expected an American Pope. I think we've mentioned
I don't even
how
think he
unlikely
was
that
on our
was.
bingo card. We had a strange bingo card, including the Italian, the pizza guy.
We all wanted Pope Pizza Dance.
We wanted the Pope's We wanted the Pope Pizza Dance to make it.
Cardinal Pizza Dance.
Cardinal Pizza Dance.
But that would be fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
And then, of course, we've got some new ones for the upcoming season. And I thought, we would do something on secrets. Everybody's got them. It's been estimated that
Jason,
people keep something like 10 or 20
you,
secrets.
You do not keep that many
they
secrets.
No, but there are apparently a certain number of secrets allegedly that everyone keeps and never tells anyone.
Anyone? Do you have a secret?
Yes, I have a couple
You
of
have a
secrets
secret?
that I've never told anyone.
Seriously?
Not my wife, not my kids, not my brother.
I think
crazy is
most
that?
people would be amazed to learn that you could keep a secret.
And then here's a question. Do you think those secrets that people keep and have never told anyone, what sort of genre or what sort of
sexual?
Well, some might be sexual. I think some might be religious. Some might be
religious.
Do you think some might be a matter of what's legal, what's illegal?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe I keep secrets because I've done something illegal, or I keep secrets because I've done something violent.
I think any secret that you keep would,
it necessarily make people think
poorly
that.
on you. Yeah, it would be something that.
But only
would
if they
bring
knew I had a
shame
secret. I
on
wasn't.
you.
I wasn't sharing it. Oh, that's what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
would I keep a secret that didn't bring shame on me?
Yeah, I think the only secrets we tell are secrets that are about other people. Maybe we keep our own pretty close to the rest.
Do you have any of your own that you've never told anyone?
Do I have any of my own? Probably. Yeah.
And I mean, some
that I've
scientists...
told anybody?
Yeah.
No, I probably have told my wife everything.
And some scientists who study this say that, there are some distinctions. Like what some people might call a secret, other people, might not necessarily be a secret. For instance, it might just be something that you've thought that is negative or something that you hoped for, right? Like
I want to kill my boss or something like that. That's not a
so
secret.
you don't share it with anyone, so then it's a secret.
Right.
Or you're thinking about, divorcing your wife. That's a secret you've never told
That's
anyone
not a secret.
yet.
No.
She knows.
It's got to be something you've done, right?
I don't know.
Something you've had or something you've stolen. Yeah, something.
And speaking of secrets, we're gonna do grandparents this year as well, right?
Yeah. I don't know how. That's an interesting segue. There's probably a ton of secrets that I hope my grandparents keep from me.
Like maybe they're not really your grandparent.
No.
Or they are secretly rich, and when they die, you're going to be rich.
That'd be a nice secret.
That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, my grandparents have long since passed, though. My last one passed in 2012.
Ah, you think your last one passed?
That's
right.
The secret,
That's
right. Yeah,
do you think
I like that idea.
Do you think it would be a good idea if you were wealthy and your family didn't know it to just keep that secret until you die, and then upon the reading of the will, they find out they've got a lot of money?
It's very interesting. I actually do think that.
I
do think that because I think if you know you're going to be, if you know you're going to be rich, I feel like sometimes knowing is a curse, right?
Yeah, maybe you wouldn't be as motivated in life.
Not just motivated, but you kind of be a dick.
Also, I would worry. I wouldn't want to step out of the shower or get in a car and drive it down the road by myself if my family knew I was rich.
No, I wouldn't.
Especially as I got older.
See, that's such an Abbeville thought.
Well, speaking of...
See, if you go up in Connecticut, everybody's rich around you, so you don't really care that much.
Speaking of getting into a vehicle that you're not certain is up to standard for driving, what do you think about this $400 million plane?
Oh, see, I thought you were going to ask me about the Popemobile.
That Qatar is offering Trump.
Yeah, so I think we definitely need, I think...
Got to talk about Trump a few more times this season.
I don't know if we haven't put him on the couch. We put the effect on the couch, but maybe we actually look at the man.
Maybe we'll put the man on the couch.
Or something with graft.
Maybe narcissism. I thought about putting some mental illnesses on the couch this year. We really haven't done very much of that.
The idea that, it's now acceptable to accept a $400 million gift from a foreign government whose interests, I would say are hostile to those of the United States, except I look at their human rights abuses and what I would term as our human rights abuses, and I don't know, maybe we're kind of on the same page.
Well, we don't outwardly support Hamas like they have in the past, right? They've given money to Hamas.
Is there really a difference, though, between an organization that,
Careful, you could get kicked out of Colombia for what you're about to say.
Disappears people, an organization that, commits violent attacks on innocents?
In fairness, we haven't been disappearing that many people. Historically, we've done it, and then we took a real big pause, and now we seem to be back to it. I feel like Qatar has been disappearing people for quite a while, just to consider the whole Middle East for that matter. But
yeah, I don't want to do total moral equivalency, but we've lost a lot of our moral authority.
Well, look, we do throw that word narcissist around, malignant narcissist. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit.
I'd like to know more about
maybe we can get
specifics.
Someone on the show that is a narcissist researcher.
He said a narcissist. I think we already got two.
Got a couple of those.
We already got a couple of those on the show.
To get somebody on that's an actual professional that won't necessarily diagnose Trump, but can tell us what the hallmarks are of a true narcissist, and whether there's anything to this notion of a malignant narcissist, or is this just a way to make Trump sound
a bad
even
narcissist?
worse?
Well, I would like to know from you and from this expert.
Well, there is positive narcissism and negative narcissism.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
I think it's like love bombing, right? You can bomb someone with love because you genuinely love them and sincerely want to show them that you care about them. And then you can also love bomb them as a way to try to ingratiate yourself after you've been totally a jerk to them.
Well, self-love, come on. It's awesome, right? We all love ourselves. Do you think that FDR wasn't a narcissist? Do you think Abraham Lincoln was a narcissist? See, that's what I mean.
I think when we use it that way, we're using it in the same way maybe a 8th grader uses commas, where every time they take a breath, they just literally put one. And I don't think
so. What you're saying is my psychological explanation is
the equivalent of an 8th grade grammarian,
an 8th grade girl, or boy. Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't think girls would make that many mistakes with commas.
Hey, I went to my daughter's beta club last night.
Speaking of commas, yeah.
Right. Speaking of commas, I went to my daughter's beta club induction. Mm-hmm. Man, we have to do something, I think, about men and women again. There were so many women who were honored as Beta Club inductees. For those of you who don't know, Beta Club is really the precursor to National Honor Society. Mm-hmm. And we just did my oldest daughter's National Honor Society about a month ago. the ratio of women to men, man, it's like 2 to 1, 3 to 1.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of like travel soccer, I think. It's just a way to spend your time, make your kids overly anxious, put them on a pedestal unnecessarily, and spend a lot of extra money.
And you look at our classes though. I'm, and I know we talked about masculinity before. We've talked about what's wrong with our young men, but maybe a deeper dive
into this division, right? Between
or
men
maybe
and women.
why are women doing so well?
Well, look, that might be better than saying why are men doing so poorly,
right?
Yeah, what is it about the environment that is so conducive to women doing so well intellectually, academically, and let's face it, even in the workplace, they're
maybe
doing
it's
better
the
and
first
better.
time as a society we valued emotional intelligence.
Or maybe the first time in society that women have felt strong enough to like venture out on their own and not have to do it with a man.
Yeah. And, I think it'd be interesting to get your perspective as a father of a daughter, but also a father of a son.
Sure.
And, maybe the differentiating expectations, the concerns that you have with each
maybe
are probably not the same.
Maybe we'll look at that. We'll call it the division of labor or something like that.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we are Put 'em on the Couch, and if you've never listened to us, what we are is a variety show, first and foremost. We just talk about a variety of different topics, some historical, some political, some religious, psychological, and
some
always trying to bring some level of levity to the discussion. We try to talk about things in a way that you might only imagine talking about them, or you might only think about them. You wouldn't necessarily get on the air or talk about these things in mixed company, whether it be what's the purpose of grandma. Yes, literally,
and
we're
grandpa.
thinking about looking at
push them out to sea.
Why do we have grandparents? Why do we care so much about them? Why do we bestow so much regard for them? Why do we keep them alive? Right?
I think J.D. Vance would be curious about anybody past the point of fertility and what their purpose is in life.
Trump as well, which is interesting because he's almost 80 years old himself.
Yeah, but men are fertile for longer.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, another comma.
Orgasm.
I did want to do not just orgasm and the penis itself. I think we're going to do some cheeky episodes this year.
Yeah, we've got to look at why the penis is shaped the way it is. Right?
Wait, there's I've never thought about why it's shaped the way it is.
Well, it's so kind of plain and straight and singular and boring.
Is that why some people decided to cut it?
I don't know, but when you consider the rest of the animal world, we've got all of these intricate penises with claspers and cusps and medieval maces.
Wait, is it true that a duck's penis is like a corkscrew?
Yes, some are.
That's
Absolutely.
true?
Yeah.
Like
and
a mallard's penis is like a corkscrew?
They unscrew when they're becoming erect, and they unscrew
to screw.
In a way, right, literally, and in such a way that it fits into this labyrinth of a female reproductive duct.
Really?
Right. So in a human female,
so the
reproductive
ductwork for a
opening and
female
ductwork
duck
is very straight and very open, right?
Right.
Whereas inside a female Argentinian duck, it's the Argentinian lake duck that I'm familiar with, which you might be talking about. This thing has literally like this very strange blown glass looking shaped curves and crooks and crannies. That's the female reproductive tract.
Sounds magical.
So the male has to, he unfolds this thing, and it's very quick. The erection is very quick. They've caught it on high-speed camera. You can go to the internet, ladies and gentlemen, and look up the Argentine lake duck and look at the phallus or the erectile activity of the Argentine lake duck and see this unfurrowing, if you will, this erectile activity.
So I got to be honest, like 9 times out of 10, I am a Darwinian. I believe in evolutionary
But when you hear about
biology,
this
but now I'm like, what is
penis,
the point of that? How does this benefit?
Well, that's just it. That'll be a nice question that we can sort of entertain, can't we?
I think we could.
And I think, ladies and gentlemen, this year, in an effort to try to grow our podcast so that people don't get caught up in the minutia, or we don't make you try to get caught up in the minutia of the science, I think what we'll do is we'll have little segments where I will do a teaching time, a teaching moment. So we're going to talk about most of the stuff pretty tongue-in-cheek in a very kind of casual way. Sometimes even a campy and maybe even flippant way, because we've got to keep our edge, right, Nelson? We got to offend.
That's right.
We got to offend somebody some of the time.
I think that's.
Then
how you grow.
we'll you'll hear a school bell, and that'll let you know that it's time.
School's in session.
It's time for school. So you could tune out, maybe, right? You could go to the refrigerator, get yourself another drink,
or you could just hit that forward button 30 seconds at a time.
30 to 60 seconds and see where we are. But yeah, Nelson, I think we could definitely look at these kinds of things related to the size and shape of the human penis compared to that of other animals. We could look at orgasm, specifically what's the purpose of a female orgasm.
See, that one always fascinates me, Mr. Evolutionary Psychologist / biologist.
So what's the point of a female orgasm?
What is the point?
Right. What's the purpose of one?
And do men and women experience orgasms the same way?
And if not, how do we know that, right?
Right.
So,
how do you know?
A lot of good science on that, right? Starting back as far as Masters and Johnson, you've got Kinsey and many others that you've probably heard of, but you might not know about the nuance of some of their research and how it came about. So we'll definitely talk about that this season. What else do we have? Profanity.
Oh,
damn! I can't believe. Shit. I can't believe we left profanity off of last season.
Well, it's got to get.
I prepped it. I read so much about it. I had no idea there was so much information, just voluminous amounts of information from anthropology to literature to religion, as you might imagine. And it's just a fascinating sort of topic of study.
Well,
don't
bury the headline. Don't bury the headline. What is your favorite profanity?
Well, fuck. I mean, what can I tell you? I mean, the 4-letter words, generally speaking, but more specifically, fuck.
Yeah, it's so versatile.
Yeah, it is. It's so versatile. I mean, it can be so many things. You can use it in so many ways, as a noun, as a verb, as an adjective, as a gerund. I mean,
there's a lot of debate, and we can get into this, about the origins
that's right.
of fuck.
And the origins of many curse words in particular.
Absolutely.
And there's even some linguists, some neuroscientists that argue that certain words do certain things to your body, your lungs, your breathing, they engage certain parts of your brain that other words just simply don't. That literally some of these curse words or these profane words, specifically the 4-letter ones, come from a different part of the brain than, say, A, B, C, D, E, F, G comes from, right? Like if you say the word fuck over and over and really loudly and put the person in an MRI or a functional MRI, more of the emotional pathways are going to light up.
That's interesting.
Suggesting that there's not really a lot of intelligence that goes with it.
See, my dad told me that swearing was a sign of ignorance.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, I don't think so necessarily. But what I will say is, at least not according to some of the smartest people I know that actually study it and use swear words, like John McWhorter from Columbia University, the great linguist who's written extensively about swear words. He's so confident that swear words are not only not bad for you, but good for you, that he encourages his children to use them. But he teaches them the consequences of using them in certain kinds of company, when and when you shouldn't use them, things of that nature. But no, I think...
Wait, have your kids... First of all, when your kids were little, did they swear?
My kids swear a little bit now, but they do it in cute ways where they'll change the word shit to hat, right? They'll change the word fuck to flug. Like, they're not going to use curse words. They're going to try to come up with
when they were little,
creative ways to express.
When they were like 1 or 2?
Yeah, I think they accidentally used those words, probably because they'd heard me. And I tried not to make a big deal out of it, although it is hard not to laugh at your 1-year-old when he's doing something that looks like he's concentrating. Did you ever watch that episode of
Modern Family?
No.
God, so there's a great episode where they're at a wedding, and the flower girl sees her father crying at the wedding, and she... to cheer him up, she says "fuck," because she'd done it a couple times before, and he becomes hysterical. How can you not laugh at a little kid swearing?
Yeah, I guess again, it's easier to laugh at it than it is to cry or get mad about it.
That's right,
because ultimately that they've probably gotten it from you.
That's right. What else we got this year?
Man, we've got again. I want to look at creativity. I think I've mentioned that in the past. Imagination, creativity. Man, we can go a lot of different places with this, but I was thinking about creativity, not just in children, but also in adults, imagination, the spirit of maybe childhood.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking about fairy tales
and
I
like that.
Mother Goose and Disney, that kind of stuff. Speaking of Disney, we did say we were going to put Disney on the couch. We're
Walt
going to look at
Disney.
Walt
we
Disney
haven't done a character in a while.
No, we definitely
we've
should
done
do Walt
Freud,
Disney.
Hitler, and now
let's do someone that maybe isn't quite as controversial.
Big an asshole.
Although I think Walt Disney was kind of an asshole. Is that right?
He could be. I
think Dr. Seuss was for sure.
Dr. Seuss. There's a lot there.
So I definitely like to put one of those kinds of guys on the couch. Some kind of entertainer, some kind of humorist. Mark Twain has been in the news lately.
That's fine.
He would be awesome.
So look, there's also a relationship that we haven't talked about that is actually the most, I believe,
Kissing cousins, ladies and gentlemen.
The cousin relationship.
Not that many probably people have kissed their cousin outside of South Carolina.
I was just saying outside of Abbeville.
That was the first person.
You,
by the way, that was the
did
first
you kiss your
person.
cousin?
Yeah, you know it was. It was the first girl I ever kissed.
Was it just like practice, or?
Underneath the window air condition?
That's hot.
I was sitting there
Literally,
with the drainage dropping on my head from
Oh,
the
you
air
were
conditioning.
outside.
I was outside.
You were outside.
My mom was inside my grandmother's house, and she came out and caught me kissing a young woman about age 10. I was probably 9 or 10 myself. Her name was Kim. This turned out to be my cousin.
Have you ever seen Arrested Development?
No.
Okay. It's a great show about
I think
kissing
you have
cousins.
mentioned this before on the air.
So, all right. I was actually thinking about the relationship that we have with our siblings. I think it'd be fun to get your one of your brothers on, or both, whichever one you like. You're the oldest, right?
Yeah. So
I'm the middle.
Okay.
And then maybe we could have my younger sister Jenna on. I know she's on the Trump Grief podcast.
Yep.
So I think it'd be fun to sort of dive into that. You know, it's funny, we don't think about it, but our sibling relationships are the longest relationships we're going to have with anybody in our entire lives.
And arguably
Isn't
the
that
most
interesting?
meaningful and influential.
Well, I think there's something there. I think we should take a look at that. And obviously, it's something our listeners can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that'd be a good one.
So do you embody a lot of the older sibling? What is the sibling one? The theory of
Birth order?
Yeah, Adler. So do you embody a lot of characteristics?
Oh, Alfred Adler, yeah, the
Adler,
Neo-Freudian.
that's Adler,
He
right?
was one of them, yeah.
Don't mess with me.
There've
I
been
know
a couple.
I know more about psych than you do.
Well, look, there's a newer there's a newer look at birth order.
Oh, really?
By a man named Frank Sulloway, who I like. There's another one, I think, Cohen. So yeah, I've read a couple of those.
You're just showing off because you couldn't think of Adler.
No. You said Adler, and I was like, who?
Adler's birth order theory.
Adler, Adler.
That's what I said.
Alfred Adler.
Don't Boston with me.
Yeah, I know. I think there's something to birth order, right?
But do you embody some of those characteristics?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
but is it more like
fundamentally what is known about birth order or believed about birth order is that the youngest is typically the most liberal and carefree and willing to make more mistakes and get out there and get after it, right?
Okay.
Whether that brings them success or financial success or not is to be determined. But in terms of like taking risk, intellectual, religious, emotional, they do more of that.
Talk about us poor bastards in the middle.
In the middle, I don't know. I will say that, again, you guys get overlooked.
Who cares?
But the oldest, like myself, tend to be the most conservative, believe it or not.
Yeah,
the most
really?
conservative.
Really?
I don't know that I'm necessarily the most conservative. I think my middle brother might.
But
be
are you thinking of
more
that in
conservative than me
politics, or are you
certain
just thinking of that in just life
just
in general? Yeah.
Just in general. What else? There's some evidence that the firstborn, I think, makes the most money. I don't know that that's necessarily always true, but again, maybe that's because they're so conservative and they hoard their resources. Yeah, I'm not sure. But you got to also consider that your parents are going to be alive longer for the first than they are the third.
Yeah,
fourth or the fifth. And so that can go either way. In as much as parents provide support and encouragement and insurance, I think the firstborn are going to be in better shape, right?
Sure, yeah.
Plus, I don't know about you, but I've heard from some parents that after the first, maybe certainly by the second or third, they don't care as much about parenting in the same way. They're not as nervous, anxious, I should say. They're not spinning their wheels. They're not overly concerned
I felt like
about
I cared
the
as
first
much.
one making a mistake. Care about the same things, I think it is, right?
Yeah,
I cared about writing down on a chart how many hours my baby was sleeping at a time and when he had his last bowel movement, or she.
And then the second one, you're like,
the second one, I'm like, I kept up with that just at the hospital because they told me to, right? And then I stopped doing that. Yeah. But man, I had the color chart out at home for Cecilia, right? Looking at the poop to make sure that everything was.
Did on that first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know.
I was concerned about the way I put them. I swaddled them.
You did a color chart?
Yeah, dude. Because the
a color chart. It's shit.
That's right. So the poop will be different colors based upon the kind of milk that the baby is getting. So it would give you an indication of whether or not your wife or the woman, the mom, was
lactating properly,
producing the right kind of milk at the right kind of time. Right, your baby is going to get what it needs. So there's a thing called the hind milk versus the fore milk. So the fore milk comes from the ducts closer to the nipple, and the hind milk comes from deeper in the breast tissue, I believe. And it'll actually look different in the poop. So it'll give you some indication of whether or not the baby is getting what it needs.
So maybe that's
Nice.
another topic. My mother's a lactation consultant. She's a doctor of lactation. So maybe we put breastfeeding on the couch.
Get the La Leche League on the couch. Yeah,
and
that's a great.
and then get the bottle
It's a great
feeders
topic, man.
back in there. Yeah, it is. Because they always like the
breast is best. Is breast really the best for
breast
everyone?
is the best. So maybe we'll put the breast on the couch.
Yeah, put the breast on the couch.
Right?
Nothing wrong with that. And if we're putting the breast on the couch and all these other things that are spicy, why not put spice on the couch?
Spice.
The spice of life.
The spice of
I'm
life.
fascinated by
The culinary cultures of the world.
Well, I'm fascinated by this potential connection between spices. It can be something as simple as salt, right? Ubiquitous as salt.
Yeah.
Versus something like curry or cayenne pepper, and how that has sort of co-evolved with different cultures around the world, and what that might mean for the evolution of these cultures and their immune systems and their societies. Could some of these things have discouraged certain kinds of disease by putting it on the food?
Oh man,
discouraged parasites to grow on that.
There's so much there. There's so
even
much
with
there.
gardening, right? I mean, you've heard before, if you want to garden, first of all, you got to make the garden large enough so that if you lose some from pests, it won't hurt, right? But there are other gardeners that say, well, yeah, you got to also grow things that will discourage certain animals from coming around, right? You've heard that before.
Yeah. I think we need a chef, and there's so much. A lot of
botanist, I guess.
In a lot of areas where, or a lot of religions where certain foods are forbidden, a big connection to that is the land. So like in areas where pigs are considered, unclean. It's pigs are just really, really, really bad for the environment.
Sure.
So the food is just okay. Well, we're not going to have.
Well,
that
speaking of the germ theory of disease, Nelson, did you see the video of our Health and Human Services Secretary this weekend in Rock Park, Maryland, right outside of D.C., waiting in a literal cesspool with his grandchildren?
I did see this.
And
I don't know.
Well, we've asked a couple of people who know him best. What's going on with this guy, and a couple of medical professionals have said, look, he has come out, in no uncertain terms and said he doesn't believe in the germ theory of disease. Right? I thought that was settled for the last several hundred years, but he doesn't believe that certain germs cause certain disease. And if you don't believe that, then what's wrong with swimming in human fecal matter? Because you don't believe those are germs necessarily, and if they are, they don't necessarily cause the pathogen known as E. coli.
That guy's insane.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable because we know he and his grandchildren, hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, they don't get sick at all, right? Hopefully, they didn't ingest this stuff into their bodies, nose, ears, eyes, mouth, while they're waiting around in this creek that literally has a sign everywhere that says, this is for sewage spillage. This is overflow from sewage. We're talking about human sewage flowing into that creek. It's been that way since the 70s, my understanding. Nobody gets in that water. He was caught on camera. Actually, he put this out, I think, on Instagram or Facebook this weekend, letting people see him frolicking in this water with his grandchildren, his 8, 7, 6-year-old grandchildren. There was 2 or 3 of them in the water with him, and it looked like his head was completely wet, so he had been under the water even. So
I think maybe, sort of not transitioning, but sort of, going into an area where we can do a show on this. I would love to put Doc on the couch, right? Because I'm sitting here saying that guy's an idiot. And to be honest with you, my belief that he's an idiot is really based on my trust in science. Mm-hmm. And it's not science that I've ever really looked at outside of a 10th grade biology class.
Well, maybe we look at that. Maybe we take a look at science this season as well.
Science and trust.
Look at theory. What does it mean? Like, it's just the theory. You've heard that term so many times. Yeah. Maybe we address this question of what is a theory?
Yeah.
Right? And if it's just a theory, do we really have to take it that seriously?
Right. Yeah. I had a student just this year ask me, well, is there any definitive proof that smoking causes cancer? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And they were like, well, what is it? And I'm like, well, there's dozens and dozens of studies,
but not all studies are causing. Not all studies are experimental.
Yeah, and right? I mean, of course, smoking causes cancer. To me, that's just like basic common sense.
But I think that word "cause" in some cases has to do a lot of heavy lifting, right?
Right.
Like when RFK says that there is an environmental cause for autism, It's not genetic. It's not because we're doing better testing. There's an environmental cause, and we're going to find it. I think that word cause is doing a lot of heavy lifting. When it comes to there's a cause for cancer, and that cause is smoking, I don't know that it's doing as much heavy lifting, because I think what we know from the voluminous amount of evidence we have about that connection is that while it's not necessarily experimental, while it is correlational, and what I mean by that is we look back at the life of people who develop lung cancer, and a majority of them have smoked, right?
Right.
We find that by doing these kinds of retrospectives, these correlations, these regressive design studies, that somewhere in the neighborhood of 55% of the variation among people with lung cancer can be attributed to smoking. Now, that does leave maybe 45% of the variation in lung cancer something else in addition maybe to smoking. But it's far and away the most, the best explanation we've got, the best predictor we've got of lung cancer, right? Out of everything else. Yeah. It's the best predictor.
Well, I think, it makes sense for people in that I'm sucking something into my lungs that's not supposed to be there.
I need an out.
Now I'm developing cancer.
Yeah. But I need an out.
And I think that's the big danger with the vaccine and autism connection that I guess will be proved or disproved by September. That's amazing. Did you know?
Never mind the fact that
we've been running.
Never mind, we've been studying this for
what's wrong with
30, 40 years.
No, all we had to do is say we're going to figure it out in 5 months, and that's it, man.
And he's going to find the two environmental causes.
Right.
He says
he's got it in September. I'm very excited.
And we're going to do that, by the way.
In August. By August,
we're going to do that with 44% less budget for Health and Human Services. And we've already cut, I think, 10,000 people out of Health and Human Services the first go around when Elon Musk went around and.
But do you know how we're going to do it?
I don't.
Science, baby.
Yeah,
it's all about science.
Yeah, again, that word science is doing a heavy lift.
I understand people's belief in this. I think ridiculous theory, because people weren't being diagnosed with autism. Mm-hmm. And then there was widespread vaccination in the 80s and 90s that hadn't been there. Right. And then there's this increase. And so it's just a post hoc ergo proctor hoc fallacy.
Yeah, it's like when I walk up to the elevator shaft at school, and never mind, there's 4 or 5 people already standing there. And the button, the call button that says that somebody has already pressed it, is illuminated. I just get this feeling that I need to press it anyway. And when I do, because I will, when I do press it, that elevator opens sooner rather than later. In fact, it opens a lot sooner than it seems like it would have.
Right.
And so when I get on it, I can't help but to feel as if my press, which by the way was the 5th one in a series of press, is the one that ultimately made it open. Right, so it got there faster because I pressed it.
It might make you sick.
That is
it might be the one that gave you
the epitome of a correlation, though, right? It's that idea that if something happens in close space and time, it must have happened for the reason it happened is these things go together. Yeah, the same thing caused them both.
Yeah, and that's why I think we should look at a deep dive into science, and then finally sort of the opposite of that, the essence, the beauty of unpredictability.
Oh, you're talking about vibes now.
No, I'm not talking about vibes. I'm talking about what happens when 11 grown men together walk out onto a field against 11 other grown men and try to represent their country. Because, we get the World Cup coming up when we end up.
Well, we hope we still have the World Cup, right?
We hope we have it. It will be happening.
It will happen, but we don't know if America is going to keep it. I mean, there's been some consternation regarding
our human rights abuses.
And people's fear that if they come into our country, we won't let them back out or we'll send them out immediately. Well, that would be one way to win, right? Just send all of the great
Lionel Messi to
CCOT. Yeah, get him to CCOT. By the way, you heard Trump. He reasoned the other day, speaking of CCOT and human rights violations, he said that something was equivalent to a gimme. Did you hear that?
Yes. That was the plane. Yeah. The plane is a gimme. It's a freebie, baby.
400,000.
Somebody says, "Give me that. Let me take that putt." You take the putt.
It's a mulligan.
It's a 4-foot putt. Just take it. Just pick it up. It's yours, baby. Don't putt it. Don't putt it. Yeah, so I do want to talk about, sport in the same way you were talking about food, how sport sort of encompasses the regions and the areas and the countries.
I think I brought this up on the podcast before.
We brought it up.
That question, not question, but the book title that I read, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. I was in Barnes & Nobles. I pulled a book off the shelf, Nelson, from the history culture section.
Yeah.
And it said, Soccer Explains the World.
Yeah, soccer explains the world, absolutely.
And I looked through it a little bit, and they were talking about how the style, the pace, the way in which certain countries play soccer reveals something about that culture.
It does. It really does.
Their politics,
absolutely.
It's just their day-to-day, which is fascinating. I don't know what American soccer says about our culture. We're kind of crazy and disjointed and up and down.
My daughter, 10th
just the
grade,
fact that I call it soccer instead of football is kind of telling, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think that debate was settled. I think it actually is technically soccer.
Okay.
My daughter is 10th grade, finishing up Great Gatsby. And I was talking to her about F. Scott Fitzgerald and his belief that, and the pervading belief of, artists and songwriters and, all people who were involved in culture. That the United States in the 20s, and I think still today, is sort of a cultural backwoods, compared to Europe, compared to some of the other parts of the world.
Well, we're definitely culture vultures, right? We don't really have a whole lot of our own.
Our own.
And what is our own, we tend to look down on it, don't we? We tend to go, oh.
Well, and I think the great American classic to me is Gatsby. I think that's the great American novel.
It's close, if not.
It was written by the great American couple. Yeah. Well, by F. Scott and Mrs. And so the funny thing about that is it was written. The two of them went off to Paris, or actually the south of France, right? To I guess to be inspired because it ain't
find culture.
Right?
Got to find some spice other than salt.
Yeah, right. So I like that vein that you're swimming in. I think taking it to a football vein. I think what our football says is that we don't believe in anything
unless you're Christian Pulisic. Have you seen the documentary called Pulisic? Have you seen the documentary?
I've seen part
on Paramount.
of it.
You got to take a peek at that, man. What a fascinating documentary. Here's a young man who overcomes lots of different odds, not being old enough to play club ball in Europe, but being good enough, not knowing the language, but learning the language everywhere he went anyway, including but not limited to Italy. He's a big standout at AC Milan right now. He's in his second year.
Yep.
He's taken them pretty far this year, although they're now out of the Champions League, right? But they're they were there, quarterfinals, something like that, quarterfinals. At any rate, he didn't know a lick of Italian. He went there and learned it well enough to hold press conferences. When he was at Dortmund, by the way, 5 years. I didn't realize he was at Dortmund for 5 years. Started at 15 there. And wasn't even promised that he'd get to play with the first team because he didn't have the right kind of credentials. It turns out if you're not European or from European descent, you can't play on the first team. You can't start there on Saturdays and Sundays.
Oh, I didn't
can't
know
get paid.
That. I didn't know that.
So his grandpa was Croatian, I believe, or Czech.
Okay.
And he got in through that technicality. The Dortmund's business team pushed and got him status so he could play there. But this kid, was learning German well enough to whenever he got sent off to Chelsea, he addressed the whole crowd of 70,000 people there at Dortmund and spoke beautiful, fluent German at age 20. I mean,
well, first of all, that's a lie because there's no such thing as beautiful German. That is a horrific language.
But look, always smaller than everyone else on the team because he was a young wunderkind, right? He's a young prodigy.
Wunderkind.
He was so humble. The kid, I mean, when people found out he was going to do a documentary, like Weston McKennie, his friends from the American team, or Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who is big at AC Milan himself right now, is like an executive. When they found out Pulisic was going to do a documentary, they're like, what's it going to be about? I mean, he's pretty good, but he doesn't talk. He's so humble. He's so shy. He's clinically shy. They couldn't understand how he was going to make it work. But again, he's always pushed against these odds. He's always pushed and pushed. I mean, he's arguably the most successful American soccer player in Europe ever.
Yeah. I think that's an indictment on
yet,
American soccer.
Yeah, and then still, when you ask people from Europe,
is he one of the 30 best players in Europe?
No,
Not
of
even
course
close.
not. But he is one of the best American soccer players ever.
Yes.
But this guy, he didn't go to college. I thought he went to George Mason. I actually have mentioned that before. When I looked him up years ago, it looked like he was going to looked like he went to George Mason. I guess he
was accepted or something,
but couldn't go.
Yeah.
And he also didn't go MLS route either. He went straight to Europe at age like 15.
Yeah, good for him. Well, you have to. Yeah. You have to. So I think that's a little bit of a preview, an appetizer for what we got coming up. Should be more regular in the summertime. I know we have some vacations planned, but I think
hopefully we can get one out every week.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So you got anything else?
Man, that's it. I'm gonna leave here and go button down the hatches since it looks like it's about to rain again.
It is about to pour. In fact, Jason, I just got an email. I umpire.
Mm-hmm.
My baseball game was just canceled.
Very nice.
So
you won't make that cash, but
won't make the cash.
You will be free.
But I'll go spend it for
Yeah.
something else.
You'll spend the cash you would have made.
That's right. I'll spend the cash I would have made. Hey, that's another fun one.
That's girl math, they call it.
It's drunk girl math.
Yeah. All right, man.
Dude,
Well, I appreciate
enjoy doing
it.
this, man. Yeah, good to see you again.
You as well, buddy.
All right.
See you, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye, guys.